Welcome. This is my wife, Christina, and I'm Joel Wiseman. And we're honored to have Pastor David Harwood from New York with us this morning. You pastor the Restoration Fellowship. Just so good to see you again and to have you share with us today.
Thank you. It is my pleasure.
Would you like to share a little bit about what you do?
Well, yeah. My wife and I and two other couples planted this fellowship back in 1976-77, and I haven't left. We've been living in the same area, and we have various people in our fellowship who have been with us since like 76, 77, 1979, still with us, walking with the Lord strongly. My personal life, my desire is to be oriented into my relationship with the Lord first of all, really primarily. First thing in the morning, last thing before I go to sleep at night, throughout the day. And then I am, by the mercy of God, happily married to a wonderful woman whose name is Elaine, in a growing relationship and partnership since 1976. And I'm so grateful for what it is that the Lord did in my life in bringing the two of us together. We are parents of 3 adult children, one of whom was with you in Germany. I went there because I have a heart for theology in lyrics, and I have a primary emphasis, which is on the love of God. And I told Leonard that I would teach a seminar to the students so that perhaps their lyrics might be able to reflect a certain theology. And for me, it was like, this is worth the trip. And plus I'll see Benjamin. And I'm writing songs. I'm writing another book. I'm getting it finished. This one will be about encouraging leaders to actually love the people that they're leading, which is taken for granted, and I would like to sort of bring it onto the front burner. And I think that it's going to be a valuable and helpful book.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, looking forward to it. You're really in a unique spot geographically at the moment with the COVID-19 virus. As of today, there's 18,000 deaths in New York State and 13,000 deaths in New York City alone. I remember you saying when we were catching up beforehand, your county has more cases than the state of California.
More deaths.
That's
yeah. It's really insane, and one of the things that people need to, and I have by the mercy resisted, is pointing blame. I know that you want to ask me about both tragedy and triumph. I have 2 stories.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
The tragedy, I mentioned earlier privately, I guess, to you that I'm involved with a network of urban pastors in the New York City area. One of the dear brothers and one of the great benefits that I had in being involved with this group for about 10 years is I considered him to be not only a colleague but a friend. That passed away from COVID-19. He was 73 years of age, African-American brother, Bishop Joseph Williams, a bishop in deed and not just in title. The person that, I don't function like this, but the person who would have been considered his armor bearer called me up at 8 o'clock in the morning, the morning after he passed, just sobbing. And I was talking with a brother who is the catalyst for this meeting, who's one of my dearest and best friends from out of an Indian background from Trinidad. And we were just talking as to how we missed Bishop Williams. What a really, really good man. It's heartbreaking just speaking about it. The week or so before, the woman who is over developing the prayer ministry of the congregation. She's about maybe a year older than me, so she's old. And her husband is even older. and I'm able to say is with gratitude, because he's about 72, 73. He's retired New York City cop. He was a first responder around 9/11, and the government lied to those people and said, you do not need face masks. And the amount of cancers and respiratory problems that ended up happening with these people. And his respiratory system got really deeply affected by this thing. At times he will be up all night coughing because of the garbage that he was inhaling back in 2001. And then he survived cancer, and he had like one of the arteries in his neck. He had to have that thing sort of like opened up. So he had 3 comorbidities. And although he's a retired cop, one of the things that he does is he has become an air marshal on these private planes which ferry like billionaire types to and fro Washington, D.C. from the New York area. He had to go to the firing range to qualify for this. He's around all these young guys. He's qualifying. But I guess about 12 of these guys all came down with COVID-19 because they're flying all over the world. And he's in his early 70s with 3 comorbidities, and he comes down with it as well. And we are in prayer. And then his wife comes down with it. The doctor said, comes down with these symptoms. You don't need to come in. The doctor said, you've got this thing. She called up. She received prayer. She felt as if there was a spiritual force that lifted off of her face. And the next morning, they were both, they woke up, both of them completely well.
Wow. Praise
so
God.
We give the Lord praise, and at the same, and are grateful for, and I hear stories from my friends, especially those who are more urban, who, of people both who have died and others where it seems like God has really answered prayer. I attribute it to prayer. You know, I don't know whether you guys have this experience in Australia, but here in the United States, the weather people, the meteorologists, they'll say, there is a storm coming. Stay tuned and watch our commercials and we'll tell you how bad the storm is. People are glued to the set. It's really a storm. The people of God get together. The storm is averted or it is highly mitigated. That did not happen with Hurricane Sandy in 2012, but it has happened so many times. And the response of the believing community is, those stupid meteorologists, they don't even know what they're talking about. Did anybody pray? Yes. Stupid meteorologists, stupid weather people. And so like we have like all of this dire forecast of how many hundreds of thousands of people are going to die and the millions who are going to be affected, and it's damped all the way down. And what does the believing community say? It was a conspiracy. All the models were wrong. Did anybody pray? And so I've decided that if I pray about something and it seems like what it is that I have asked for happens, I'm going to attribute it to the hand of God.
Wow. It's amazing. It's amazing to hear what God is doing in amongst all of it. Like you said, you know, the news is just, you know, fear, 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 you know, watch our commercials, fear, 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 keep you glued to, you know, to the storm. But yeah, like what you're saying is so important that we're praying and so important that we're recognizing that God is moving and that he's doing things. So yeah, so good.
I believe he is.
Yeah.
In the midst of this, 2 people that came to know the Lord via the surgeon sister that I was talking about. They are really high up in finance in the New York area. They've both come to know the Lord.
Yeah.
They're having visitation. Nobody's told them anything about visions and trances and shaking under the power of God. This is happening in like the upper echelons of some of the financial stuff in the New York City area. And that's just people that we know about, you know, and we don't have that huge sphere of influence.
Yeah.
So I'm confident that that can be multiplied exponentially in regards to people reaching out to God and the people who know God reaching out to others.
Yeah. What do you feel the role of worship, especially at this time, is? What's the role and importance of worship? I'd love to hear your perspective and insights, experience, that sort of thing around worship.
Well, from my perspective, the role of worship just has not changed one bit. Not one bit. Perhaps some people's desperation may have increased. I'm positive that there's more worship going on from people's houses now because they're there. Mm-hmm. And when our lives are threatened and our livelihoods are threatened, we do have people in our fellowship who've lost work. People do tend to get before God. Before this happened, I had spent a few months talking about the church as a temple, as house of prayer, and I had transitioned to talking about the church as temple, as a house of worship. And one of the things that I was really focusing upon was God as Lord of Hosts. This has been a favorite topic of mine. I don't know why. It captured my it's like it just captured my heart. Writing songs about him being the God of heaven's armies back in the 90s and, this type of thing. But I sort of felt as if the Lord of Hosts, or even the God of heaven's armies, that it was a little bit too, I guess, antiseptic for me, a little bit too, there was no unction. No, it didn't grab me emotionally. And so over the last couple of years, I've changed it and taught us, so we sort of think along these lines, that the Lord is like heaven's warlord. He's heaven's warlord. It's like he's not just sitting on a throne saying, now go out and go to war. He went first. Mm-hmm. There's nobody as courageous as the Lord Jesus. Yeah. There's just nobody who conquered through weakness out of passion and love. There's nobody like him. And today, what occurred to me was that in the same way that the tabernacle is sort of like a replica of the courts of heaven, that God fashioned King David to be and his court to be a replica of heaven's warlord and his council and his armies. And the way it's sort of like because I can't picture it, I think of like movies that I've seen with Vikings, like you got the Viking guy and he's, leaving all of the scantily clad women out of it and all of the booze and stuff. There's this guy. He's sitting in this like long hall, and he's on this chair in the room, and he's sort of like slouching, and he's got this whatever it is, that some alcoholic beverage that he's drinking, and he's got all of these warriors in this room, and he has his counselors, and then there are the sages and the priests, and it's sort of like and nobody will mess with this guy. He became the warlord because there's nobody that is comparable to him in valor, in skill, in strategy, in strength. That's the Lord Jesus. That's our King. And so this captured my heart, in that the one who is being worshipped in the temple oftentimes is referred to as Adonai Tzvaot, the Lord of hosts, whom I, in order to grab me emotionally, refer to as heaven's warlord. I haven't written anything about heaven's warlord yet, Joel, and I don't have it patented. So if you should write a chorus about it, please send it over. I'd love to use it, okay? And so another thing which I feel is like a lot of fun in regards to this, but is also sort of awesome, is that the book in the New Testament that talks the most about angels is the book of Revelation. There's a word that's translated and strictly translated correctly as Almighty, is Pantocrator. It means having like all might. That's the way it's translated strictly. But in the same way that I did work with agape and going back into the Septuagint to see as to how that word is used, I decided to do a word study on Pantocrator. And what I found out is that apart from the book of Job, where it does translate El Shaddai, throughout the entire book, practically every single time the Lord of Hosts is mentioned, apart from like upon occasion, they'll do like a Greek transliteration of the Hebrew, it's Pantocrator. So like when you see the Lord of Hosts, they're translating it into the Greek, Pantocrator. And so like I'm going, what have I discovered here? Nobody has ever seen this before. What am I seeing that's wrong? And it's like, I can't see it as being wrong. And I ended up looking up the way which the two primary Messianic Jewish versions translate Almighty in the book of Revelation. Those two versions are currently the Tree of Life version, which was translated by like a panel, and also the complete Jewish Bible that was translated masterfully by David Stern. And those two translations tend to, except for maybe one or two instances where they translate Pantocrator as Almighty, it's always Lord of Hosts. It's always Adonai Tzvaot. And I don't know, maybe it's like the whole Jewish thing of like wanting to connect with who is this God. But when you see the heavens warlord dispatching all of this angelic activity in the book of Revelation, to me, it becomes even a bit more alive. And so like I'm trying to focus some of our worship on heaven's warlord in our midst, because that's who he is, that's who's dwelling in us, that's who's dwelling in our midst. And we were seeing some fruit from that. And I think it helped to prepare us for this time of calling on the Lord to dispatch his host, to dispatch his army, and to begin to deal with the ungodliness and the wickedness also of this disease that's going on. So in what way has the emphasis in worship changed? For me, it hasn't changed at all. Not a bit, not an iota. It's always like he is just wonderful, he is holy. I do not believe that I was created to worship him. I believe that I was created to be in relationship with him. But as he reveals himself to me, I can't help it. Like picture, here's our Father talking with us and says to Joel and Christina, let me tell you something about Jesus. Look at his humility. Isn't he amazing? And revelation dawns, illumination dawns, and then you begin to see Jesus, humble one, Jesus, embracing humility for the sake of love, Jesus. And like the degree of his humility becomes so awesome that we go from appreciation to awe. And so our worship is sort of like, to me, it's like being brought into the fellowship of the Trinity, only I'm a creature. And like what the Father is appreciating about the Son, I see it. To some degree, I see in part, I know in part, I prophesy in part, my songs, obviously, I sing in part, I write in part, but there is still a germ of reality in this. And as it's made real to me, like his goodness, his goodness, his goodness. And it becomes like I'm appreciating what you're showing me, but I'm in awe of it. And I enter into worship that way. And it's sort of like the response of a person or a creature that was created for this form of fellowship. And so worship, to me, I'm not saying it's a no-brainer because I believe that our brains are to be fully involved. But it like the importance of it, I mean, it's like for the soul that is in relationship with God, I don't think that we can live without it. I just don't think we can. It's It's not the same as drinking living water, but it's like, to some degree, it's like expressing this life. And it is refreshing, but I don't worship in order to get refreshed. I worship because of what it is, who it is that I am seeing.
Yeah, so good. Wow, it's awesome.
I know I'm getting intense and ranting.
It's great. It's great.
It's so good.
He's
It's so
intense.
good.
He's Jewish. He's from New York. No wonder he's intense. Well, exactly.
No, it's so good, man. What you when you said, you know, heaven's warlord is inside us, that far out, that just sparked something in me, especially in this season where, well, for me personally, like during that first week of hearing about this, you know, this thing breaking out and it literally being across the world, like, you know, it's unlike anything I've experienced in my life. And, you know, I don't think that my parents' generation experienced anything, you know, like.
I think I'm your parents' generation.
Yeah, well, yeah, but, you know, like the world wars and, you know, and stuff like that are the only thing that we have to kind of correlate this to. But even that's not the same, you know, it's like literally in every country of the world. And so there's people feeling quite, you know, out of control and, you know, like feeling powerless and all of that sort of thing. And this idea of heaven's warlord being inside us, that's wild. And that he wants to partner with us. He wants us to partner with him to see, you know, his will dispatched in the earth. And all of that coming out of not of a place of, you know, like us being soldiers or minions or people that he's, you know, like placed on the earth to do his will or whatever, but because he loves us and because he wants to have a relationship with us and because he wants to partner with us like a father does a son in his purposes in the earth. That's just, man, heaven's warlord inside us. That's, yeah. When we really dive into who he is, you just can't help but want to express awe and gratitude. And, you know, that's what all of our creation should come out of, right? Like this, it's weird to think that, that somehow the church can get into places where like, okay, this is what we're doing. We turn up and we play songs and we sing to God. And, you know, it's just, man, it's kind of odd.
We've got even outside of the seeker sensitive movement, we have worship as gimmick,
right?
Worship music as a draw, a utilitarian use of that aspect of our ministry. I don't believe that falls under the category of spirit and truth as in John 4.
Yeah.
I believe that there's something else which is being served through the expressions of our worship.
Yeah.
And I didn't get that sense at all with the videos that I watched of your church and your pastor and stuff like that. Didn't get that sense at all. But I remember a friend of mine said to me many years back, you've got like a great song service, and friends of mine who would itinerate going, you know, let's, you know, use this worship time to warm the people up so that they can get ready for the word and all of this type of stuff. And I don't believe that it's wrong to be in touch with and in harmony with, be in one heart with the message which is coming forward, to be, but not to use the songs to necessarily enforce the message, but to be inspired by the message and then to release the song. That's sort of how it is that I see that. So there can still be this synergy, but worship is not the act of, the form of worshiping God is not the handmaiden of a man or woman's vision.
Yeah.
It's for the Lord.
Yeah. That's so good, man. It's so good. I feel like we could talk about this for hours. we, we we should wrap up. But worship leaders in particular, is there anything that you would like to challenge or encourage us with today?
Write your own stuff. I really believe, and you guys are already doing this, that every congregation should have an indigenous expression of worship. And personally, I would rather play a B or B plus song written by a friend of mine than that which is on the top of the Christian worship hit parade. Try to keep things relational. Before this was an industry, people would share songs with one another. It was like and I'm grateful for the industry. There are things that I would never have heard apart from the industry. But there is a lot of cookie cutter stuff which is out there. I would say trust the truth of the Word of God to stir hearts to an emotional expression rather than perhaps just starting with the emotional expression. If you're leading songs, try to choose lyrics that don't make the people into liars.
Good
So,
point.
the Lord said, these people draw near to me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. Oh, Jesus, at the very sound of your name, my knees buckle, I'm weak, I bow, I cry. I've never been in love with anybody all the time as much as you, day and night. And it's just a bunch of malarkey. It's nonsense. It isn't true. And so, try to stick with things which are true.
Good.
In 1982, which rhymes with true, God put me on the shelf for a couple of years. I really thought that I was hot stuff. I was 30 years of age. I'm talking at conferences. I'm prophesying. And what I found out was that I was prophesying off of what I was inspired by other people's prophecies. And I was making the Bible into a series of allegories in order to make it somewhat interesting to me. And I felt as if the Lord put his thumb upon me and said, if you're not inspired by the word as it is written, there's something wrong with you, David, not the word.
Yeah.
And so I cut back stuff. I encourage our prophetic people to get offline and to find God for themselves and to have legit relationships with peers and leaders that they can vet what it is that they're doing and they can share their illumination. You understand? So it's be real. Let your lyrics reflect the gospel and the nature and the character of God. I would say that I am not against in any way, and I think at times it's really helpful to have a song which is really emotion driven. But if every single song is emotion driven and doctrine is left in the background, it seems to me as if people are being more inspired by the worship experience than by the God and the truth that is supposed to inspire the worship experience. And so, you've heard my songs because I sent you the YouTube of the most recent album that Leonard Jones trapped me into doing. And it was oh, we got to get your stuff recorded. I'm going, Leonard, that's very nice. I know that you like me. And then he's going to the airport and he's really talking about it. And so our tech guy and Benjamin are he's really sincere. Go down there and record with him. And it turned into this crazy project. And I'm grateful that we did it. But the lyrics that I use, because I'm an educator and a worshiper, you know what I'm saying? So there's this prophetic teaching worship, there's this mix, and I want that people's hearts should be formed so that the emotion and the desire and fervor for the Lord would be released. But if we start at the place of release, I wonder about the strength and the level of depth of the foundation. And so I would say to those of us who are writers and leaders, don't neglect the foundation. There's something glorious about our foundation. Build on the foundation. Don't neglect the other types of material, but please consider these simple things as well.
Yeah. Wow.
That's good.
So good. I did want to talk about, you've written 2 books, one that is out. We've got it here. It's very good. It's wonderful. We were refreshing on it just yesterday, and yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, I just loved how you re-examining that. For God so loved the world, and just, it wasn't for God so wanted to show he was perfect, or for God so wanted worship, or for God so, it was the simple he loved. And it's everything that you've been talking about. Everything comes back to this relationship with him. It's all about relationship and the overflow from that relationship founded in love.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah.
Get a hold of God's True Love. You can find it on Amazon. And if you're motivated and you want to go to what may be one of the most solid ministry training schools that's online, I highly recommend the Fire School of Ministry under Dr. Michael Brown's auspices, where this is also offered as a course.
Yeah, awesome.
Great.
So how can people get in contact with you? So that's how we can get the book. If they're wanting to find out more about you and what you're doing, where can they get in contact with you?
They can get in contact with me through Facebook or go to our, either Restoration Fellowship New York website or the Love of God Project website.
Well, thank you so much for giving your time to be with us today. Yeah.
Bless you guys.
Love you too.
Good night.
Thanks so much, David.
My privilege. Bye.